The story opens on the west side of the Rogana Kingdom, where a gigantic, isolated mansion lies hidden deep within a forest. Xian resides there alongside four caretakers. Waking up one morning, he is shocked to find Arushera waiting by his bed. She explains that since he requested her to wake him up, she simply decided to stay in his room the entire night. Surprised, he clarifies that she did not need to go to such overprotective extremes. She warmly embraces him, assuring him that she is perfectly happy to serve him. Realizing it is pointless to argue, he simply asks her to let go so they can head to breakfast. As they make their way to the dining room, Xian observes the pristine condition of the estate. He reflects on how it was merely an abandoned ruin a year ago when he was on the brink of death. She and the others arrive just in time to save him and restore the property. He also notes that his rescue back then was not their first meeting, as he clearly remembers their faces from his past. Suddenly, Fina sneaks up from behind and playfully covers his eyes. He easily guesses her identity, knowing she is the only one who would attempt such a childish trick. She warmly rubs his head, teasingly calling him cute, which embarrasses him as he insists he is a grown man. Annoyed by the interaction, Urushera strictly scolds her for acting so improperly. However, Fina quickly fires back, humorously pointing out the hypocrisy of the scolding given her rival's own nighttime antics in his bedroom. Urushera defends her overnight stay by claiming it simply helps her remember her main duties. Wanting to wrap up the conversation quickly, Xian agrees, and they head straight to the dining room. Upon opening the doors, Nagi greets him warmly. Hailing from the eastern region, Nagi takes her duties very seriously and is in charge of cooking for the day. She serves a popular miso and tofu soup. Xian praises her culinary skills, expressing amazement at how Eastern cuisine transforms a single type of bean into so many different dishes. Pleased by the compliment, she offers him a bowl of fermented soybeans, known as natto. She explains that while the smell is incredibly strong, the dish is a highly nutritious favorite from her homeland. As she scoops up her favorite food, the pungent odor immediately disgusts Xian, making him wonder how anyone could possibly eat it. Fina complains about the scent, comparing the rotten beans to eating dirt. Offended, Nagi threatens anyone who mocks her hometown cuisine, but Xian quickly steps in to calm her down, assuring her they mean no disrespect. The group then realizes Ibris is missing from the table. Urushera complains about the absent member's undisciplined sleeping habits. Fina suggests they just eat without her, but Xian firmly refuses. He enforces the household rule that they must always eat their meals together. Urushera smiles at his dedication, and Fina laughs, apologizing for her impatience. He then kindly asks Nagi to go wake Ibris. Afterward, Fina drops a week's worth of newspapers in front of him. Since she cannot read the text, she asks him to share any interesting details. Scanning the pages, he informs her about a recent thief invasion at the royal capital. Xian learns from the newspaper that criminals recently stole from the royal warehouse. Urushera recognizes the thief's name as Guerreru, a notorious criminal operating in the southern Rogana kingdom. Xian notes that this chief murders and robs based entirely on his mood. Angered by the news, Fina firmly states that such scum needs to be dealt with. Xian is surprised the thieves bypassed the royal capital's strict guards, realizing Guerreru must possess special powers to pull it off. The group stole 15 weapons and gems before escaping the elite knights. Hearing the criminals fled toward the ELT region, Fina realizes the danger is heading their way, and Xian hopes the nearby city stays safe. Just then, Nagi arrives, dragging a very sleepy Ibris into the dining room. Ibris complains about being tired and wishes the group would just eat without her, but Nagi strictly reminds her of the household rule. Naturally lazy and easily annoyed, Ibris apologizes for her morning sluggishness. Xian simply smiles and kindly tells her to be more cautious next time. With everyone finally gathered, they begin their meal. Later, Urushera does the laundry while Xian works in his office alongside Ibris. He asks her to fetch several specific magic technique books from various shelves. As she gathers the volumes and hands them over, she asks how he can tolerate staying cooped up inside for so many days, noting that it looks terrible for his posture. Xian explains that he has no choice, as writing these magic technique books is their only source of income. Ibris assumes Xian has no financial troubles since he earned consolation money in the mountains after his exile from the royal capital. Stretching his arms, he confirms this, but adds that researching magical techniques is his hobby anyway. To demonstrate, he snaps his fingers, instantly brightening the room. He explains that while magic stones allow anyone to use basic spells, he wants to invent an all-purpose magical technique that benefits everyone, even those without innate talent. Frustrated by his selflessness, Ibris points out that he acts like a servant to humanity despite their betrayal. She recounts how he risked his life to defeat the Demon Lord, only for society to credit fake heroes and erase his true achievements from history. She believes he possesses enough power to destroy humanity but actively chooses not to. Looking at his hands, Xian admits he considered revenge right after his exile. However, he eventually abandoned those trivial thoughts, choosing instead to quietly support the world while still holding on to the hope of being a true hero. Touched by his resolve, Ibris quietly mutters that he is incredibly cool. When he asks her to repeat herself, she playfully changes her words, teasingly calling him cute instead, which immediately flusters him. Just then, Arushera enters the room carrying a freshly made cup of hot cocoa. She warns him that the drink is extremely hot. When he confirms it is too warm, she eagerly offers to help, gently blowing on the cocoa to cool it down for him. Instead of cooling the drink, Ibris playfully teases Xian by blowing directly into his face. He becomes flustered, which only makes her laugh at his unexpectedly amusing reaction. Arushera angrily scolds Ibris for acting so disrespectfully toward him. Unbothered, Ibris claims she is just playing around and points out that Arushera is equally guilty of teasing him under the guise of blowing on the hot cocoa. Annoyed by their constant bickering, Xian abruptly stands up and demands they stop playing around. Suddenly, his demeanor shifts to complete seriousness as he senses his perimeter barrier shattering. He knows the simple magic surrounding the mansion is only meant to keep ordinary people from wandering too close. Because it requires immense power to forcefully break through it, he instantly realizes a strong enemy is approaching. Treating the deliberate breach as an act of war, he immediately rushes outside. Upon opening the mansion gates, Xian is completely shocked by the devastation. The surrounding trees, walls, and flower beds are entirely ruined. Arushera and the others quickly follow behind him, anxiously asking if he is safe. Amidst the destroyed courtyard, a man confidently steps forward. Disappointed by the sight of his targets, the intruder introduces himself as the notorious thief, Guerreru. Xian recognizes Guerreru from the morning newspaper and calmly asks what business he has at the mansion. Guerreru dismisses him, demanding to speak to the head of the household. When Xian confirms he is the master, Guerreru mocks him, assuming he is simply a wealthy, spoiled child. Unfazed, Xian questions Guerreru about his recent palace invasion and the whereabouts of his companions. Guerreru carelessly admits he murdered his own crew over their split of the reward. He then demands all the wealth hidden in the estate, claiming he received special intel about a massive treasure hoard. Hearing this, Xian momentarily panics, worrying that classified royal secrets about his existence have leaked. However, he quickly deduces that the criminal only knows vague rumors. Relieved, Xian firmly refuses to hand over a single coin. Steady, frustrated, Guerrerusha shifts his attention to Arushera, Fina, and Nagi, arrogantly offering to pay them more if they abandon Xian and serve him instead. Arushera swiftly rejects the offer, declaring her unwavering devotion to Xian. The other two adamantly agree, refusing to ever serve a low-class criminal. Realizing they will not be swayed with money, Guerreru laughs and threatens to kill Xian to force their compliance. He draws a sharp sword from his bag. As soon as the blade is revealed, Xian is stunned. He immediately recognizes the weapon as a legendary artifact, allegedly given to humans by the gods long ago. 3 holy swords are passed down from generation to generation within the Rogana kingdom. Zagrema, which devours mass, Bitter, which governs the flow of things, and Melthord, which controls distance. Known as the distance killer, Melthord renders the concept of physical distance completely meaningless. Wielding this terrifying weapon, Guerreru swiftly swings his blade and instantly decapitates Xian. Confident in his victory, Guerreru boasts about the weapon's incredible power, assuming his victim is entirely dead and unable to hear him. Enraged by the sudden attack, Arushera, Fina, Nagi, and Ibris immediately drop their human disguises and transform into terrifying, otherworldly creatures, including a dark elf, a werewolf, and a demon. Seeing their true monstrous forms, Guerreru is paralyzed with fear, realizing the dark rumors about the estate are entirely true. The furious group viciously threatens him, promising to drag him to hell for daring to harm Xian. Suddenly, Xian calmly tells them not to make such a massive fuss over a mere beheading. To the thief's absolute shock, the severed body casually stands up, picks up its own head, and perfectly reattaches it. Xian casually admits his combat intuition has dulled after 2 years of peace, making it impossible for him to dodge Melthord's absolute strike. Despite the brutal decapitation, he assures everyone that he does not have a single scratch on him. Refusing to calm down, Arushera and the others argue that slicing his flawless skin is an unforgivable crime worthy of death. They vehemently refuse to stay silent after witnessing such immense disrespect toward him. Smiling at their fierce loyalty, Xian warmly addresses them. He assures them that he has never once considered their true forms to be ugly, but rather finds them incredibly beautiful. Xian firmly states he does not approve of them using their anger to display such terrifying power. Instead, he admits he loves them much more when they are smiling. His sudden, genuine confession of love completely flusters Arushera, Fina, Nagi, and Ibris, who frantically struggle to process the overwhelmingly sweet sentiment. Asking them to wait, Shion steps forward to finally settle things with Gareru. The stunned thief demands to know what he is dealing with. Shion openly reveals that he is an invulnerable monster, cursed with absolute immortality after defeating the Demon Lord. He vividly remembers the Demon Lord laughing at him during his final moments, leaving the victor as a mere shadow of his former self. Refusing to believe this, Gareru calls him stupid and insists a famous hero named Levios defeated the Demon Lord. Overhearing this, Fina and the others quickly mock Levios, revealing the fake hero was easily defeated at the castle doorstep and possessed nothing but good looks. Shion then casually picks up Melthord, expressing deep nostalgia for the holy sword he used to swing long ago. Still in complete denial, Gareru questions why the true savior of humanity is hiding in the remote countryside instead of being celebrated as a worldwide hero. Gripping the legendary weapon, Shion promises to answer that exact question by making the thief experience the terrifying truth firsthand. Confused by his survival, Gareru listens as Shion explains that the Holy Sword's divine protection temporarily delayed the curse's effects. Soon, the thief's voice grows heavy and broken as panic sets in. Shion calmly reveals that invulnerability is not his only curse. Simply by existing, he constantly drains the life energy of anyone around him. If he lived within normal civilization, the populace would perish within a month, proving he is entirely unfit to be a hero. Terrified, Gareru screams for him to stay away and desperately offers to return all the stolen treasure in exchange for his life. However, Shion clarifies that the theft and his own decapitation are completely irrelevant. His true anger stems entirely from the destruction of their courtyard. He points out the roses Arushera studied so hard to bloom, the walls Fina constantly repainted, the pavement stones the procrastinating Ibris perfectly arranged, and the garden Nagi meticulously weeded every day. Shion coldly declares that the thief committed an unforgivable sin by destroying the home his family worked so hard to build together. For this crime, Gareru must pay with his life. Removing his glove, Shion reveals that the Demon Lord specifically cursed his right hand to instantly annihilate the life essence of anything he directly touches. Placing his bare hand squarely on the terrified man's face, Shion closes his eyes and takes a slow, deep breath. When he opens his eyes again, all traces of his former innocence are completely gone. Ultimately deciding the thief is not worth killing, Shion spares his life and tosses him out into the streets. Arushera praises his kind heart, fondly recalling how he saved them in the past. Even after defeating the Demon Lord, he risked his own life to protect her and the others from execution. With nowhere to go in either the human or demon worlds, he graciously gave them a new purpose in his home. Deeply grateful, she promises to devote her life to staying by his side. Later, while relaxing by the estate's pool, Shion wonders if she truly needs to be so fiercely overprotective of him. Arushera explains that they heavily rely on whatever outside knowledge they can find about serving a noble master, admitting they feel inadequate because they are merely fake caretakers. Refusing to hear such self-deprecation, Shion insists that if they are fake, then he is a pathetic, fake master who cannot even sleep peacefully on his own. Touched by his comforting words, Arushera gently holds his bare hand. Panicking, Shion warns her that he is not wearing his protective glove, fearing his death curse will instantly activate. She softly reassures him that because they are a part of his family now, the curse has absolutely no effect on them. She expresses her deep love for him, happily noting how warm his hands truly are. The tender moment is abruptly interrupted when Fina, Ibris, and Nagi arrive at the pool, eager to join the fun. Overwhelmed and embarrassed by the sudden crowd, Shion immediately runs away. The four of them playfully chase after him, easily catching up to him. Though it is far from a normal relationship, they are undoubtedly happier this way, deeply enjoying their chaotic but loving life together. The story flashes back to 2 years ago, right after Shion defeats the Demon Lord. Upon returning to the royal capital, his life instantly becomes a living nightmare. He is brutally tortured by captors who resent his presence, constantly mocking his monstrous, immortal body and wishing he would simply die. Cursed with both an unyielding regeneration and a deadly energy drain, he faces endless persecution. When the royal magicians ultimately fail to contain his draining aura, Shion finally escapes the capital. Becoming a lone wanderer, he actively avoids all human contact. He fears falling asleep, terrified that he will lose his sanity, turn into a mindless monster, or suffer through agonizing nightmares about his torture. His lonely nights are entirely consumed by darkness and gloom. However, back in the present day, he wakes up peacefully to Ibris cheerfully greeting him. Surprised to see her awake so early, he expresses relief that she does not immediately prank him the way Arushera and Fina usually do. Amused by his lowered guard, Ibris instantly begins teasing him, prompting him to loudly complain about her antics. Walking down the corridor a bit later, Xian silently grumbles about constantly being teased by them. Arushera soon approaches him, and together they head down to the mansion's basement. Down there, he conducts a special blood transfer ritual with her, Faina, Nagi, and Ifris. By signing a magical contract and transferring his blood into their bodies, they can temporarily suppress his deadly energy drain. Standing in the center of the spell circle, he prepares to share his blood with Arushera for the day. She praises his brilliant plan to overcome the curse, but he humbly credits them all, acknowledging that only high-ranking magical beings like them could possibly tolerate the intense ritual. Because breathing his blood would instantly kill normal humans or magical beings, Xian must carefully manage his immense power. When he first arrived at the mansion 2 years ago, his deadly aura withered all the surrounding plant life. However, by strategically distributing his blood across the estate, he successfully contained the energy drain. Now, thanks to the flourishing roses grown by Arushera and the healthy vegetables cultivated by Nagi, the isolated mansion feels like a perfectly normal, vibrant environment. Arushera expresses deep gratitude for this setup, noting that serving him allows her to live a happier life than she ever imagined. Realizing they have been talking for too long, Xian initiates the daily contract ritual. He stands in the spell circle and silently recites a complex, ancient incantation involving mystical imagery and 12 magic mirrors. To finalize the pact, he pricks his finger with a sharp object to offer a drop of blood. However, Arushera eagerly gets carried away during the intake process. Startled by her intensity, he quickly pulls back and scolds her, prompting a swift apology for going overboard. Confirming the ritual's success, she happily declares that she can feel his immense power blending deeply into the core of her own body. Her intense enthusiasm slightly unnerves him. Curious about the ritual's mechanics, she asks if the contract strictly requires blood. When Xian awkwardly admits that other bodily fluids, like sweat or tears, could technically work but are far less effective, she immediately jumps at the idea. Leaning into her eccentric, overprotective nature, she excitedly suggests using those alternatives moving forward, insisting she simply wants to spare him the pain of constantly pricking his finger. Not fully understanding the awkward implications, Xian earnestly agrees to experiment with other options next time. He simply wants to respect her wishes since she always takes such good care of him. Hearing his sweet appreciation, Arushera blushes heavily and quickly turns away. Flustered by her own wild imagination, she frantically backtracks, insisting it is best to keep him pure and that they should strictly stick to their usual routine to avoid any trouble. She reassures him that everything is perfectly fine and promises to notify him whenever the protective effects of his blood start running low. Later that day, after being playfully teased by his energetic companions, Xian realizes he has completely forgotten about his dark curse. Surrounded by their noisy, affectionate antics, his past trauma fades away, making his previous desire to hate the world feel like an entirely trivial matter. This warm, chaotic happiness is now his everyday life. After breakfast, Xian heads to Fina's room to find her. He knocks and asks if he can enter, and she readily invites him inside. However, upon opening the door, he is instantly startled and quickly slams it shut. Fina playfully explains that she was covered in dirt from cleaning the garden and thought it would be fun to prank him while she changed her clothes. She teases him for being so easily embarrassed, but he firmly insists that he respects boundaries even if she does not. Pretending to apologize, she claims she is finally decent and invites him back inside. Trusting her, he opens the door again, only to find she is pulling the exact same prank. He slams the door shut again, exasperated by how tiring it is just to get her out of the room. Eventually, Fina meets him in the backyard, fully dressed and clean. Noticing him holding the holy sword, she curiously asks why he brought out such a dangerous weapon. Xian explains that he wants to spar for the first time in a long while. He worries that living a peaceful, retired life for the past 2 years has severely degraded his physical abilities, making him fear he might eventually fall behind against ordinary thieves. She reminds him that he still easily defeated the recent intruder, but she eagerly accepts his request to help him train. While Arushera is highly respected for her combat tactics, Fina easily boasts the highest pure physical strength among their group. Stretching her muscles, she expresses her sheer excitement for their long-overdue battle. However, she points out that practicing against the legendary holy sword would not be proper training. Smiling, he assures her that he has absolutely no intention of using the divine weapon today. Xian reveals that despite trying various methods, the holy sword Melthord remains completely unresponsive to him. Since the ancient gods crafted the weapon exclusively for mankind, its outright rejection proves he is officially no longer human. Deeply moved, Fina embraces him and warmly insists his humanity does not matter. Since she and the others are not human either, she only cares about his happiness. Embarrassed but grateful for the comfort, he awkwardly asks her to let go so they can finally begin their physical training. Agreeing to restrict all offensive magic for a purely physical battle, Fina suddenly vanishes from his sight. Xion frantically searches for her before she strikes from above, teasing him for his incredibly slow reaction time. She easily maneuvers behind him, warning that she will easily counter all of his evasions. Recognizing she is not holding back at all, he accepts the intense challenge. Despite some initial rusty movements, Xion quickly adapts to her overwhelming speed. In a sudden flash, he swings his blade and flawlessly points it directly at her neck, finding a perfect opening. Fina is completely amazed that he managed to regain his combat instincts in just 2 minutes, especially after taking a 2-year break from fighting. Smiling, he credits her for helping him recover his reflexes, thanks her for the excellent sparring session, and suggests they finally return to the mansion. Fina suggests they take the training more seriously, playfully complaining that she feels frustrated when he ends the session just as she starts having fun. Wanting to fight a little longer, she instantly transforms into her true magical beast form. When a shocked Xion asks why she transformed, she happily reminds him that he previously called her true form beautiful. She then proposes a high-stakes bet. The first person to land a hit wins, and the victor can demand anything from the loser. If she wins, she wants him to call her big sister for an entire week while she casually addresses him by his first name. Horrified by the immense shame of losing such a humiliating bet, Xion fiercely resolves not to let her win. Fully embracing the challenge, Fina charges directly at him. Refusing to hold back, they both leap toward each other and fiercely collide, triggering a massive explosive blast that completely clears the area. As the dust settles, the true scale of her power is finally revealed. Back in the demon world, Fina was raised as a legendary descendant of the mighty Managarm. Just 2 years ago, she served directly under the Demon Lord's command as one of his 4 terrifying queens. During their time in the demon world, Fina was renowned as the best fighter among the 4 queens. Xion remembers she was the first when he fought, and even after 2 years, he vividly recalls the sheer intensity of that clash. However, he quickly realizes this is not the time to get absorbed in old memories. While he could likely defeat her using offensive magic, he strictly prohibited its use for this specific training session. Even if he completely regained the peak physical strength of his golden days, winning a hand-to-hand battle against her remains incredibly difficult. As they resume fighting, she aggressively tries to strike him with her claws. He swiftly dodges the attack and spins around to regain his footing. Refusing to let him escape, she prepares another rapid strike. Suddenly, an invisible force surrounds her body. She panics upon realizing she is completely paralyzed and cannot move a single inch. Xion calmly points out that she was acting carelessly. Shocked, she realizes she is trapped inside the infinite corridor. This special technique severely restricts the concept of physical distance within a defined open space. To move even a fraction of an inch, she must exert the same amount of energy it takes to travel across an entire country. She quickly deduces that executing this skill requires the holy sword Melthord. Stunned by the revelation, she suspects that his earlier claim about the divine weapon being unresponsive to him was a complete lie. Xion confirms he was not lying about the holy sword being completely unresponsive to him. Instead, his open space magic has finally returned, allowing him to cast the infinite corridor all on his own. Shocked, Fina questions if such a feat is even possible without the divine weapon. He humbly downplays the achievement, noting that his spell is a severe downgrade in power, range, and speed compared to the legendary sword. Still immobilized, she complains that using magic is completely unfair after he promised a purely physical fight. He quickly counters her argument, reminding her that he only agreed to ban offensive magic. Furthermore, he points out her own hypocrisy, noting she transformed without his permission and forced a one-sided bet upon him. Assuring her there is no need to panic, Xion explains that because his spell is a degraded version, she will automatically break free in about 10 seconds. However, as he points his blade directly at her, he confidently states that 10 seconds is more than enough time to claim his victory and decide her punishment. Realizing she has lost the bet, Fina admits she was only messing around. Once the spell finally dissipates, she playfully acts innocent and shy, attempting to evoke his sympathy to get out of her embarrassing punishment. Unfazed by the fake act, Xion flatly tells her that she is not innocent at all. Ultimately, their banter concludes with her genuinely apologizing for her reckless actions, which he kindly accepts. Meanwhile, in the Rogana Kingdom's royal capital of Rodeo, the citizens excitedly welcome the returning hero. A cheering crowd of all ages surrounds the carriage as it moves through the lively streets. Inside the carriage sits Levius, the eldest son of a noble family and leader of the Night Corps, alongside his aide, Baroa. Baroa praises his enduring popularity, noting that the entire kingdom deeply respects him and aspires to be exactly like him. Waving to the crowds gathered to celebrate his recent expedition against magical creatures, Livius privately reflects on his massive public reputation. 2 years ago, he participated in the Demon Lord's subjugation party, but he ended up taking all the credit and is now widely celebrated as the legendary hero who saved the world. When Baroa attributes the kingdom's immense respect to his great virtue, Livius bitterly admits that the public is only judging him by his outward appearance. He feels incredibly empty, knowing nobody realizes his heroic status is completely fake. Baroa quickly shushes him, frantically warning that the truth is a strict taboo and a closely guarded kingdom secret. Despite feeling extremely lucky when he first stole the glory, Livius now feels utterly hollow and burdened by the massive lie. Later, at the royal palace, Minister Gozef formally receives Livius in his office. Instead of praising the successful mission, the minister heavily criticizes him for taking an entire month to complete it. Annoyed by the lack of gratitude, Livius firmly defends himself, explaining that the magical beings were far more numerous and powerful than initially reported. He sharply suggests the minister direct his complaints toward the reconnaissance unit for providing such incredibly sloppy intelligence. Minister Gozef harshly remarks that the recent mission would have gone much better if Xion had handled it. He praises the former hero's excellence and modesty, noting he always surpassed expectations before the curse consumed him. He then cruelly reminds Livius that he is just an ordinary person placed into a hero's position by the kingdom. Livius bitterly laughs, agreeing that he is absolutely no match for a true prodigy. Gozef demands that he work himself to the bone to justify his fabricated status, assigning him a grueling new task. He must locate and retrieve the holy sword Melthord. After the meeting finishes, Livius steps outside and reunites with Baroa. He explains that the minister talked down to him and wished Xion was still around. When Baroa calls the minister awful, Livius calmly accepts the harsh truth, knowing he never possessed true power anyway. She tries to comfort him, insisting he is the best swordsman in the country and reminding him that he was the one who originally taught Xion how to wield a blade. Reflecting on those days, Livius remembers growing up in the noble family. The adults constantly pampered him, hailing him as a sword prodigy until the real genius arrived. Despite swordplay being his only redeeming quality, Livius was completely outclassed by Xion in every possible aspect. He admits to himself that Xion subjugated the Demon Lord entirely on his own. The rest of the hero party did absolutely nothing during the final L battle, and Livius shamefully recalls that he was the very first one to retreat. Looking at him with deep sadness, Baroa listens as Livius explains the miserable fate of the original hero party. Despite their power, they were utterly useless failures who merely watched Xion press forward. Traumatized by the experience, the sorcerer is now a heavy drinker, the martial artist is an addict, and the priest has attempted suicide multiple times. They are completely broken and incapable of holding a normal conversation. Livius admits he was only chosen because he got along well with the true prodigy, but he notes that Xion might actually be the biggest failure of them all. When she asks what he means, he asks how she would feel if she risked her life to save the world, only for corrupt officials to order her to stay hidden and surrender all the credit to someone else. Baroa falls completely silent. He explains that the sincerely good-natured Xion accepted the corrupt royal palace's orders just to protect humanity. Pitying him, Livius finds it strange and tragic that the true hero's good nature only brings him pain. Meanwhile, Livius stole all the glory and lives a carefree, luxurious life, making him a complete failure as well. Recognizing his own guilt, he abruptly decides to get to work. Baroa urges him to rest, but he notes that the holy sword Melthord was stolen from the royal capital while he was away. Suspecting Xion might be involved, he plans to track him down and retrieve the divine weapon. She frantically warns him about the deadly curse that destroys everything around the true hero, advising against the dangerous mission. Nevertheless, Livius firmly insists on going, eager for the rare opportunity to finally meet the real hero face-to-face once again. The next morning, Xion wakes up early on his own accord, feeling incredibly optimistic about the day ahead. Suddenly, Nagi wakes up nearby. Realizing she accidentally slept in his room and woke up later than him, she immediately kneels and apologizes for making such a massive mistake. Xion kindly reassures her that she did not oversleep. He simply woke up early. He invites her to sleep a bit longer while he gets ready to go outside for a morning run. Watching him leave, she notes that he seems incredibly happy because of the specific date. Later, during breakfast, Xion enthusiastically praises the meal, complimenting Ibris on her improved cooking. Ibris modestly doubts her own skill, admitting she actually skipped several steps while preparing the food. Xion cheerfully dismisses her concerns, arguing that sometimes less is more as he happily bites into a piece of fruit. Confused by his hyperactive mood, Ibris wonders why he is so energetic. Nagi whispers a reminder that today is a very special date. Fina and Arushera explain that it is the first day of the new month. On this specific day, when the new moon rises, the heavenly curse weakens, and his deadly energy drain is completely suppressed. Because his dangerous aura is fully contained, it is the one day of the month Xian can safely go outside without hurting anyone. On this special day, Xian does not have to worry about being a monster that spreads unnecessary injury or steals the lives of others. Living like a completely normal kid, he can freely frolic around the town, buy things, and eat out. Fully dressed and ready for the monthly outing he always looks forward to. He eagerly asks the group if they are ready to go. Ibris quickly points out that they have not actually decided who gets to accompany him yet. Realizing she is right, Xian asks who wants to come. Arushera immediately begs him to take her, promising to devote herself entirely to making sure he has the best day of his life. Faina eagerly volunteers for a date, while Nagi respectfully states she will obey his every command. Ibris, however, lazily passes on the offer, claiming it sounds like too much of a pain. After considering his options, Xian decides to take Arushera and Faina. Instantly, the group devolves into chaotic bickering. Arushera accuses Fina of just wanting to pester him for expensive items, while Fina fires back, accusing Arushera of taking him to shady alleys just to have him all to herself. Meanwhile, Nagi strictly scolds Ibris for trying to sleep the day away, demanding she accompany him so she does not slack off. Ibris retorts that Nagi actually wants to go herself just to buy things, which Nagi fiercely denies, insisting that pestering men is unsightly. Exasperated by their endless time-wasting arguments, Xian finally forces them to settle the matter quickly with a game of rock, paper, scissors. Fina and Arushera stand outside the mansion, waving farewell as the carriage pulls away. Finally, Ibris, Xian, and Nagi reach the market. The streets are bustling as always, and the group pauses to decide on their first destination. Ibris immediately suggests grabbing lunch, and although Nagi reminds her that they are there for Xian's sake, he happily agrees, admitting he is quite hungry himself. As Ibris playfully pats his head, he warns her to maintain some decorum in public. The conversation turns to food, and Nagi mentions a rare trendy confection from the West called superateria. It consists of several layers of pie dough filled with ricotta cheese and custard. Excited by the prospect, Xian decides they must hurry to the shop before it sells out. Ibris laughs at his genuine, childlike enthusiasm, and Nagi reflects on the tragedy of it all. Despite his immense power, he is still only a 12-year-old boy. It is completely normal for a child to be frolicking in town for a treat, yet Xian was forced to sacrifice his normality to fight on the battlefield for the sake of greedy adults who still label him a hero. Ibris gently reminds her that they are in no position to judge, as they were contributing factors to that past. Nagi acknowledges the sentiment, noting the cruelty of Xian's life. It is as if he is living while being struck down by the very gods he served. Xian, Ibris, and Nagi reach the market, where they finally secure the ricotta-filled pastry. As they eat, Ibris notices cream on his face and gently cleans it, dismissing his embarrassment with a laugh. They spend the rest of the day wandering through the town, eventually ducking into a library to browse for books. Xian marvels at the collection, and Ibris notes that she shares his enthusiasm for literature. While browsing, Xian notices Nagi lingering near a display of stuffed animals. When he asks if she wants one, she shyly claims she is just looking, but Ibris teases her, noting that she stares at the toys every time they visit. Realizing she is embarrassed, Xian insists on buying her a stuffed rabbit as a token of appreciation. Moved to tears, Nagi gratefully accepts the gift, expressing her deep love for the gesture. Seeing this, Ibris jokingly demands a gift for herself, but he reminds her that he recently purchased new bedding for her. As the day winds down, the group debates what to do next. Ibris points out a notice for a festival in the nearby Keflin village, known for its traditional wooden dolls and grilled herbal sheep meat. Seeing Xian's eyes widen at the mention of the village, Nagi grows concerned, noticing he looks uncharacteristically nervous. Although she offers to head back to the mansion, Xian quickly regains his composure. He insists he is perfectly fine, and noting how rare festivals are, decides they should stop by the village on their way home. Upon arriving at the small village of Keflin, which boasts fewer than 100 residents, the group discovers the annual harvest festival is in full swing. Nagi points out a wood carving of the village's guardian deity, finding its unique craftsmanship appealing despite its chaotic appearance. Ibris, however, strongly disagrees, bluntly calling the statue hideous and comparing it to the sloppy work of a drunkard. While they playfully bicker over the carving, they notice Xian staring blankly, looking uncharacteristically nervous and out of place. Sensing his discomfort, Nagi and Ibris gently suggest heading home early, abandoning the idea of buying the traditional dolls since the festival is not what they imagined. Xian agrees, But before they can leave, a loud argument erupts nearby. Two men begin shouting and shoving each other, drawing a large crowd. While Ibris eagerly watches the brawl and Nagi asks if they should intervene, Shion insists on staying out of it to avoid drawing attention. Suddenly, the scuffle spills over, and a bystander violently shoves a woman directly into Shion. He smoothly catches her to prevent her from falling, politely asking if she is all right. She quickly thanks him and hurries away. But during the collision, Shion's hood is knocked back, fully exposing his face. The surrounding onlookers instantly freeze, recognizing his black hair, red eyes, and the distinct glove on his right hand. Panic quickly erupts through the festival as the villagers identify him as the cursed monster. Terrified adults scream for everyone to hide their children and frantically grab makeshift weapons to defend themselves. As Ibris and Nagi watch the sudden hostility in complete confusion, Shion grits his teeth and quietly mutters to himself. Deeply regretting his decision to visit, Shion watches helplessly as the terrified villagers accuse him of targeting their children. Demanding he leave immediately, someone in the hostile crowd throws a stone, striking him directly. Frustrated that she could not shield him in time, Nagi quickly checks if he is all right. Furious at the blatant disrespect, Ibris threatens the crowd, casually suggesting they slice off the villagers' arms as a lenient punishment. Nagi frantically holds her back, reminding her they cannot just destroy the village. Shion abruptly orders them to stop fighting. Bowing deeply to the angry mob, he sincerely apologizes for his presence and promises to leave the area immediately without harming a single person. As they quietly walk home, Ibris complains that their previously wonderful mood has been completely ruined. Shion takes the blame for the disastrous outing, but she refuses to let him fault himself, directing all her anger toward the unreasonable villagers. Noticing his deep guilt, Nagi gently asks if something happened between him and that specific village in the past. Shion admits the villagers' fear made perfect sense. After watching him make a monstrous beast rot to death with a single touch, it was entirely natural for them to be terrified. He explains that after defeating the creature, the young girl he saved approached him, but she suddenly collapsed. Although he never directly touched her, he worried his dangerous presence was somehow harming her. Making her safety his top priority, he immediately fled the area without checking to see if she had recovered. Assuming she had simply fainted from shock or exhaustion, he ultimately decided never to return, intentionally distancing himself to protect them from his deadly curse. Frustrated by the sheer injustice, Ibris fiercely argues that he did absolutely nothing wrong and should have been welcomed as a savior. Nagi asks if he is truly okay with being treated so poorly, wondering if he harbors any desire for revenge against the village. Unbothered, Shion calmly insists he has no choice but to accept his reality. He acknowledges that to the villagers, he is simply another dangerous monster. However, rather than feeling bitter, he deeply respects their bravery. He admires that ordinary people were willing to risk their lives and stand up to a terrifying threat just to protect their loved ones and their home. Finding their love and courage genuinely beautiful, he is completely at peace with their decision to drive him away. Returning home that night, Shion sits alone in his room, staring blankly at himself. He gloomily reflects that today is already over, and with the passing of the new moon, tomorrow will inevitably arrive. He firmly believes that merely existing in that village pollutes the world, deeply dreading his imminent return to being a repulsive, cursed monster. Suddenly, Arushera knocks and enters, enthusiastically announcing that she is on duty tonight. She admits she has been riled up and eagerly anticipating her shift since she woke up, playfully pouting when he seems tired to talk to her. Apologizing for her snide remark, she happily offers to comfort him with an ear cleaning or a soothing head massage. Exhausted, Shion politely declines, stating he simply wants to go to sleep. Dropping her cheerful facade, she solemnly reveals that she heard everything that happened at Keflin village from Ibris and Nagi, noting that the incident clearly triggered his painful memories. Anticipating her extreme reaction, Shion immediately orders her not to harm the village. Arushera promises not to lay a single finger on them. However, she casually admits she would love nothing more than to brutally slaughter every single villager, continuously revive them to inflict maximum pain, and ultimately burn their stained land to ash with crimson hellfire. Despite her terrifyingly violent desires, she vows to obey him because she knows he genuinely loves humanity and wishes for their peace. Smiling warmly, she looks out the window, noting that she loves the darkness of the new moon night because it is the only time the world is not constantly being watched by the sun or the moon. Holding his hand, Arushera notes that the world has too much light that exposes everything. However, she softly reassures him that he does not need to fear the light on a night when the moon is hidden. Promising her everlasting love and care, she begs him not to shoulder his burdens alone anymore. She assures him that the four of them will never leave him, pleading with him to finally drop his heroic facade. Reminding him that tonight is the new moon, she encourages him to spill all his sadness and shame, promising that the gentle darkness will easily hide his pain. Unable to hold it back any longer, Xian breaks down and begins crying loudly. He frantically vents his deep frustrations, questioning why he must harbor such agonizing emotions and why the villagers are so horribly ungrateful. He completely wiped out the magical beasts and destroyed their nests to keep those people safe, yet he is still ostracized and feared. Overwhelmed with grief, he cries out that he defeated the demon lord and saved the entire world, allowing everyone to live in peace. Instead of being hated and treated like a monster, he desperately begs for someone to just appreciate him, praise him, and thank him for his sacrifices, confessing how truly terrified he is of his curse. Listening to his heartbreaking sobs, Arushera gently pulls him against her chest so he can finally rest and let his heart out. She reflects on how noble, refined, and powerful he has always been, constantly forced to act like a perfect hero for those around him. After a long session of intense crying, he exhausts himself and falls asleep in her arms. Watching his peaceful, cute sleeping face, she silently acknowledges how long he has been holding back his profound loneliness, hatred, and desire for happiness, swearing to help him carry the heavy burden. As Xian finally falls asleep, Arushera gently watches over him and quietly reflects on their past. She recalls how, about a year ago, the four of them, once known as the Four Heavenly Queens and the elite executives of the Demon Lord's army, were completely defeated. After the hero and his allies vanquished the Demon Lord, the queens were banished from the magic realm. Stripped of their home and purpose, they traveled to the human world to track down the hero, fully expecting and wanting him to kill them. However, when they finally located him, the curse had completely transformed him. Arushera vividly remembers seeing his ostracized, lonely figure, and the absolute shock she felt when he greeted his former enemies with a genuinely happy expression. Seeing that they also had nowhere else to go, he warmly invited them to live with him, confessing that he simply did not want to be alone anymore. Heartbroken by his depressing state of affairs, Arushera felt a profound sadness fill her heart, realizing she could never abandon such a lonely little boy. Instead of asking for death, the four queens chose to devote their lives to him, silently vowing to embrace him with overwhelming love, even if the rest of humanity hates him. The next morning, Arushera cheerfully wakes him up. Deeply embarrassed, Xian frantically apologizes for showing her his weak and vulnerable side the night before. Feigning ignorance to protect his pride, she casually claims she fell asleep immediately and does not remember anything from last night. Relieved, Xian heads down to breakfast, where he enthusiastically praises Nagi's delicious cooking. Nagi humbly explains that she managed to recreate the superateria pastry they ate at the market yesterday. Blushing, she notes that his praise makes her multiple failed attempts and early morning efforts completely worth it. As Xian enthusiastically eats his meal, Nagi offers him more. He happily accepts, praising the dish and admitting he actually prefers her homemade superateria over the original pastry they bought at the market. Overwhelmed by the immense praise, Nagi blushes with joy. Noticing his upbeat mood, Fina points out how depressed he seemed the previous night and suspiciously wonders if something happened between him and Arushera. When Arushera cryptically teases her with a vague answer, Fina pouts, wishing she had been the one to cheer him up. Suddenly, Xian senses an intruder approaching the mansion. Ibris notices his sudden shift in demeanor, but he casually reassures them that the presence feels like a lost child rather than a threat. Fina volunteers to check outside. While waiting, Xian silently wonders how a child managed to navigate the surrounding forest alone, as it is notoriously known as a dangerous sea of trees, where people easily get hopelessly lost. Fana returns shortly after, confirming it is just a lost little girl and offering to escort her safely back to town. However, she hands Xian a wooden carving the girl insisted on giving him. Nage immediately recognizes the indescribable craftsmanship as the guardian deity statue from Keflin village. As Xian closely inspects the carving, his eyes suddenly widen in realization. Fina explains that the girl traveled all the way from Keflin to find the black-haired boy who saved her from a magical beast 2 years ago. Stunned, Xian realizes the little girl never saw him as a monster. She has been searching for him this entire time just to say thank you. A story reveals a distant memory on the outskirts of the royal capital, where a member of the royal family visits a small orphanage in the Terris district. The visitor is Levius, the eldest son of the prestigious Si Jian family and a charitable swordsman praised as a hero within the Rogana kingdom. While most of the children make a massive ruckus swarming over new toys, Levius notices one boy isolating himself in the corner of the garden to read a book. Approaching the quiet boy, Levius sits next to him on the bench and introduces himself. The boy introduces himself as Xian. When Levius asks if he has any desire to play with the others, Xian simply replies that he prefers books. Admitting that he has never been good at studying or reading, Livius proudly claims that his only true talent is wielding a sword. Curious, Xion asks if he is strong. When Livius confidently confirms his strength, Xion earnestly declares that he wants to become strong as well. Recognizing the spark of determination in the young prodigy's eyes, Livius happily agrees to teach him swordsmanship. Over time, Livius takes full responsibility for Xion's training, frequently praising his rapid, amazing growth. Inspired by his mentor, Xion promises to become a great hero one day. Excited by the challenge, Livius declares that they will compete to see who achieves the title first, officially sparking their friendly rivalry. However, just a few short years later, it is Xion who is officially granted the legendary title of hero by the royalty. Waking up early after a nostalgic dream, Xion remembers that today is the day they are scheduled to retrieve the holy sword. He turns to his side, expecting to find Fina on sleeping duty, but discovers the bed is entirely empty. He catches her just as she is slipping out the door, but when he asks what she is doing, she acts highly evasive. Claiming she simply woke up early for a walk, she insists she is far too busy to talk and quickly rushes off. Wandering the halls, Xion notes that all the maids have been acting incredibly strange and actively avoiding him. He realizes they are not giving him their usual overwhelming attention or trying to cure his loneliness. Although he initially grumbles that he is relieved by the lack of smothering, he suddenly becomes gloomy. Spiraling into self-doubt, he genuinely panics, wondering if he did something wrong and assuming they all secretly hate him now. Later, as he attempts to open the dining room door, Fina abruptly intercepts him and loudly shouts for him to stop. Aggressively blocking his path, she insists they eat breakfast outside instead. Confused, Xion tries to push past her, unable to understand her bizarre behavior. From inside the closed room, he can clearly hear the other maids rushing around. Ibris tiredly complains about not getting enough sleep to finish their task, while Nagi strictly scolds her to act more refined, making it glaringly obvious that they are secretly preparing something hidden behind the doors. Inside the dining room, Nagi urgently whispers that they must continue their secret preparations, noting that today is an extra joyous occasion because it is Xion's birthday. Just as she speaks, Xion unexpectedly walks in, greeting her and Ibris before pointing out how strangely everyone is acting. Frantically hiding the bouquets they are holding, the two maids claim they are extremely busy and quickly sprint away. When Xion asks Fina what the two of them are hiding, she smoothly feigns ignorance, claiming she did not see anything at all. Moving out to the garden for breakfast, Arushera greets Xion with a clumsy excuse. She apologizes for forcing him to eat outside, claiming she accidentally knocked over some cookware and made a mess in the dining room. Accepting the excuse, Xion shifts the topic to Livius, who is scheduled to arrive today to retrieve the holy sword. He notes that it is quite strange for a man as busy as the captain of the Royal Knights to personally run such a simple errand. Fina bluntly points out how complicated the situation is, noting that the blonde knight stole Xion's identity and falsely claimed the glory of defeating the demon lord. When she asks if he despises the man, Xion quickly cuts her off to defend his old mentor. He explains that the title was strictly ordered by the higher-ups, meaning Livius was not purposely trying to steal the credit. Instead of holding a grudge, Xion actually pities him, recognizing that pretending to be the ideal hero and citizen for years is a heavy, exhausting burden. Knowing he could never gain the support of the populace himself, Xion respects Livius for playing the part so well. Hearing this, Arushera warmly notes that Xion actually seems to idolize Livius quite a bit, a sentiment he humbly questions. Noticing how much fun Xion is having talking about Livius, Arushera playfully admits she is starting to feel a little jealous. Xion fondly reflects on his old swordmaster, noting that Livius was an amazing man who never bragged about his nobility and easily connected with an orphan like him. Fully acknowledging that his hero party would never have been complete without him, Xion eagerly prepares to give his old friend a warm welcome, as it has been a long time since they had a visitor. Finally, the carriage arrives, and Livius joins Xion for tea inside the hall. Livius casually expresses his surprise at seeing the former four heavenly queens working as maids. When Xion vaguely replies that a lot has happened, Livius thanks him for the hospitality and jokingly admits he is jealous that his friend is surrounded by so many beautiful women. He playfully asks Xion which one is his favorite, causing the boy to immediately panic. Instantly, chaos erupts as the women fiercely fight for the title. Arushera confidently claims the spot as the head maid. Fina insists it is obviously her. Ibris urges him to be honest and choose her, and Nagi respectfully notes that while she is just a loyal retainer, it wouldn't hurt to be loved. Overwhelmed by the sudden attention, Xion begs them to calm down and desperately asks Livius to drop the subject. Apologizing for causing the chaos, Livius laughs and notes that Xion is living a very lively life, Xion playfully teases his old mentor in return, formally addressing him by his fabricated hero title. Levius quickly tells him to cut it out, admitting that receiving praise from the real deal only makes him feel deeply guilty. After sharing a good laugh, Levius eventually decides they have chatted enough and steers the conversation back to their main topic. Nodding in agreement, Xion officially retrieves and hands over the holy sword, Melthord. Holding the holy blade Melthord, Levius confirms it is the real thing. When Xion playfully asks if he thought it was a fake, Levius tells him not to misunderstand. He explains that he has recently been training to utilize the holy sword and feels he is finally getting the hang of it, though he is strictly forbidden from using the weapon outside the royal capital. Xion nods in understanding, noting that the three holy swords are the kingdom's hidden treasures and ultimate military trump cards. Levius points out the irony that the higher-ups permitted Xion to wield it in the past, proving the kingdom still puts much more faith in a cursed boy than they do in their own official hero. Before Xion can fully respond, Levius abruptly asks him for a favor. He wants Xion to teach him basic swordsmanship again. Noting the strange tension, Xion agrees, but Levius ominously states that this might be the last time they ever spar. Confused, Xion asks what he means. Levius reveals that he intentionally put his own subordinates outside the mansion to sleep so they would not interfere with what is about to happen. Declaring that he has spent the last 2 years acting as a miserable replacement, Levius aggressively challenges his former student, demanding to see how strong Xion has truly gotten. Threatening to send Xion to the shadows with his blade, Levius's energy suddenly shifts, and his aura turns completely dark and hostile.
Here I am.